This week began with Nigeria celebrating its 57th independence anniversary. Now, it was a day that was once again marked in a rather low-key style. The president chose to go to Maiduguri, to the front lines of the battle against Boko Haram. In this special edition of Hindsight, we will be taking a look at those issues which have defined Nigeria's journey for close to 6 decades. I am SEGUN OJUMU. Welcome to Hindsight. SEGUN OJUMU. On this program, we'll be bringing you news, views, and exclusive interviews with
security that cut across humanitarian aid to.
It becomes easier to do business in Nigeria. Now,
Nigeria.
1960 marked a new beginning for Nigeria. On that day, it became free from colonial rule. From that period till now, it has shown itself to be a country with so much promise, but has struggled to deliver on that very promise. Indeed, there have been times in its history where many felt Nigeria will break up. It came to the precipice quite a number of times, but it's always managed to pull itself away from the brink. In the lead up to this Independence Day, the activities of IPOB has been a source of worry for the federal government. Just weeks ago, it outlawed the organization, calling it a terror group. Its leader, Nnamdi Kanu, is now a wanted man. It was no surprise then that President Muhammadu Buhari, in his 2017 Independence Day speech, told those who he called troublemakers that their efforts to create disunity will not be tolerated. Amadin Uyi monitored that broadcast.
With a myriad of challenges being faced by the federal government on several fronts, the call for restructuring and devolution of powers has taken the center stage in recent weeks. While this has generated heated debate among several quarters, some groups like the indigenous people of Biafra, IPOB, have called for an outright disintegration of the country, with its calls for secession becoming popular among Southeast youths. This, President Buhari says, will not be tolerated.
I am very disappointed that the responsible leaders of these communities do not warn their hot-headed youth what the country went through. Those who were there should tell those who were not there the consequences of such folly.
He urges those interested in constitutional changes to approach the national and state assemblies.
These are the proper and legal fora for national debate, not some lopsided, undemocratic body with predetermined set of objectives.
President Buhari also added that efforts to improve the economy is in progress, with job creation at the heart of the federal government's initiatives.
Since December last year, this administration has produced over 7 million 50 kilogram bags of fertilizer. 11 blending plants with a capacity of 2.1 million metric tons have been reactivated. Fertilizer prices have dropped from 13,000 naira for a 50 kilogram bag to 5,500 naira. Furthermore, a new presidential initiative is starting with each state of the Federation creating a minimum of 10,000 jobs for unemployed youth.
He also added that there are ongoing efforts to secure the release of the kidnapped Chibok girls, still in the custody of Boko Haram. From Abuja, Amadin Uyi.
There with that report. Now, debates on the desirability of the State of the Union and its diverse parts have taken center stage of late. The cause that bind the country together have been tested by very vocal separatist agitations. But it is not the first time Nigeria will be pushed to the precipice through protests against perceived injustice and marginalization in the system. Next, our State House correspondent Kehinde Amodu takes a look at this.
Protest has always been a part of the political equation in Nigeria. But over the years, most revolts against the system have fizzled out when tested by fire. Those that have endured have birthed new political dimensions. The agitation in the southwest, spearheaded by the National Democratic Coalition, NADECO for instance, had contributed to the return of democratic government. As a reward, the presidency was ceded to the southwest by the political class in 1999. The campaign for resource control by the South-South had resulted in the 13% derivation principle and eventually the emergence of a vice president from the region, who later became president. Agitation was now being seen as a means of altering the political equation. So when the campaign for Biafra gained prominence after the 2015 elections, many initially dismissed it as a ploy to alter the political structure. But it grew bigger than that. What many have seen that makes this campaign extremely dangerous is its ethnic coloration, which attacks directly the fault lines of the Nigerian state. A new word has been introduced into the Nigerian lexicon: hate speech.
Hate or divisive speech or divisive behavior where it is illegal will be met with the full force of the law. And I want to say it again today that there will be no doubt whatsoever of the resolve of government.
Many argue that the cause may have been right, but the matter of its implementation was capable of igniting a descent into anarchy.
The population of Igbo outside Igbo enclave is about 11.6 million. You don't play with the life of 11.6 million people.
Broadcasters from Rwanda have been jailed by the International Criminal Court for the role they played in the generation of the hatred that led to the massacre, to the killings by Hutu extremists of Tutsis in Rwanda. So did we have to wait for it to get to that level?
As Nigeria marks 57 years of independence, there is still a long way back from the edge the country had slid towards. The first step is to deliberately address issues that have given rise to discontent in the polity.
Okay, let's look at security now, because that is one area which has given, one thing which has given Nigerians a lot of sleepless nights. Agitations in almost all quarters have increased, indeed, in recent months. In this report, our Senate correspondent, Nsikak Evans, takes a look at how the Senate is responding to this.
The Senate have in the last two sessions of their term devoted enormous time working on critical legislation, some with historical essence and others with relatively high-level implications for enhancing the welfare and security. On the recent cases of agitations, it was widely reported in the media that the President of the Senate described the military declaration of IPOB as a terrorist organization as unconstitutional, an assertion many took out of context, claiming that he is against the government.
The National Assembly is part and parcel of the government, and there is nothing wrong in pointing out that, oh, this needs to be done. That is why there is separation of power.
Clarifications were made when the Senate resumed plenary after its 2 months of recess.
More than ever before, we must stand for the unity and indivisibility of our country. We must condemn in strongest possible terms all forms of violence as a form of engagement. The Constitution and the law has laid down tools and procedures for us to push through our interests as all democratic nations do.
Agitations will always surface and sometimes result to crisis. The onus is on how it is being managed.
I believe we should start talking. Nigeria should start talking. We should revisit the confab report.
The herdsmen seems to be another focus based on assumptions on how harmful they are in the society. Perhaps a reason why the Senate suspended what appears to be a controversial bill on grazing reserves.
And unfortunately, because the herdsmen sometimes don't have a voice, it may amaze Nigerians to also know that there are so many herdsmen that are also being terrorized by bandits disguising as herdsmen.
We're not in the business of grazing. They should go to other areas where that business, because it is a business, that's what it is. We are farmers. We grow cassava, we grow yam, we cultivate fish. We are not into cattle rearing, so we are not into grazing. So those areas that believe that they need grazing, let them have grazing reserve. We don't want that in Delta.
I think the only thing we need for now on the grazing is a lot of education. This is where I task the National Orientation Agency to do more and enlighten people.
There is a lot of work ahead. The aim is to see security improved. This will invariably revamp the economy that will create millions of new jobs and see growth rates of 7% or more.
And Sikak Evans there with a look at the Senate's response to rising insecurity in the land. We'll take a quick break now and then Hindsight returns with more. Stay with us. SEGUN OJUMU. On this program, we'll be bringing you news, views, and exclusive interviews with
security that cut across humanitarian aid.
It becomes easier to do business in Nigeria. Now,
Nigeria
welcome back. You're still watching Hindsight. Now, before that break, we were talking about security or lack of it in the country. Over the last 6 years, the Boko Haram insurgency has led to what is now the fourth largest humanitarian crisis in the world after Iraq, Syria, and Yemen. Now, over 2 million people are currently displaced in Nigeria's northeast. Many more face starvation and diseases. Ajek Mangood, who has been covering this unfolding tragedy in Maiduguri and also in Abuja, has this next report.
The insecurity in northeastern Nigeria has forced over 2 million people in Adamawa, Borno and Yobe states to flee their homes. Some found refuge in safer areas of those states and other parts of the country. Others fled to neighboring countries like Cameroon, Chad and Niger. The United Nations says 5.2 million people in the northeast are in need of food security intervention. An estimated 450,000 children are said to suffer from severe acute malnutrition in Borno State alone. It has described the humanitarian crisis in Nigeria as the fourth largest in the world after Iraq, Yemen and Syria. This is Mariam Yahaya. She is one of thousands of faces of Nigeria's worst humanitarian crisis ever. She has been in Shagari Locust B, a host community in Maiduguri, the Borno State capital, for over a year now. Mariam says her biggest challenge is feeding her 7 children.
I have gone round looking to do laundry for people in exchange for food for my children. It's like that every day. I don't get any rest. Even if I want to rest, I end up having a headache.
Mariam's story is retold in the lives of many displaced persons here. They say help does not come their way often. A number of the children here are already severely malnourished. Quite a number of the displaced have found their way to the FCT. Now, this is the Durumi IDP camp, one of the few in the FCT. More than 2,000 of them have lived here for the past 3 years, and most of them are from Goza and Bama local government areas of Borno State. Ibrahim Amadou is the chairman of the IDPs in this camp. He tells me October 1st is just another day for them. He says it is sad because they are celebrating it far from home, where it used to be a colorful day full of activities. But while they're here, he says they want their children to have a good education as well as access to proper health care. He's calling for government assistance.
We want government to establish a hospital here that will take care of people who fall ill. This is the responsibility of government. For example, a few days ago, about 3 of our people here lost their lives.
While many Nigerians celebrate the 57th anniversary of the country's independence, the thoughts on the minds of many who are here is on the day they get to return back to their communities.
Ajek Mangood there with that report on the humanitarian disaster in the northeast arising from the insecurity there. Now, this next report takes a look at a series of events which have triggered some of the security problems Nigeria is grappling with more than for the last 57 years, or for the last couple of years, as a matter of fact, in its history. Watch this. Resource-rich Nigeria was perhaps the British colonialist most important colony at the turn of the 19th century. From north to south, Nigeria was and still is a land of many languages, tribes and tongues. From Independence Day in 1960 to the first coup 6 years later, this multi-ethnic country has evolved. Several coups and counter-coups later, Nigeria emerged from a dark military past into a democratic era filled with hope and great aspiration for its collective future. But with democratic governance came new challenges. Groups, some with militant ideologies, sprung up, questioning the very makeup of the Nigerian entity. In the Niger Delta, militant groups began attacking oil installations and pipelines. Their argument? They were getting the short end of the economic stick. After several unsuccessful attempts at containing these attacks, an amnesty program was announced by the Erdogan administration. Few years and a new president later, a new threat emerged: Boko Haram. It wanted to create an Islamic caliphate within Nigeria. The authorities will have none of that. A 5-year blitz of terror, death and destruction was to begin. Thousands were killed, millions more were displaced to this very day. That threat has been largely contained, but it has left the Northeast reeling as it seeks to deal with the catastrophic aftermath of a brutal insurgency.
Today, that same insurgency has been restricted to, to cowardly suicide attacks.
The threat from Boko Haram somewhat smothered. The administration of President Muhammadu Buhari has found itself dealing with a handful of security challenges: kidnappings, organized crime, and farmer-herdsman clashes. But perhaps the threat which has shaken it to its very core is the secessionist ideology of the IPOB, led by this man, Nnamdi Kanu. In September, it proscribed IPOB, calling it a terrorist organization.
What the IPOB is doing to unnecessarily, charge the atmosphere at this moment is uncalled for.
Before the general elections in 2015 came the grim prediction that Nigeria was on the brink of a breakup. Well, that never quite happened. But the truth is, Nigeria has always teetered on the brink of a breakup or some collapse or something of the sort. Now, going forward, it's 57 years of independence. Can Nigeria keep its act together, or will it continue like this building behind me? Will it keep being a work in progress? And that was Hindsight this week. Thank you very much for staying with us. Let's keep the conversation going on the get in touch with us on the email address and the Twitter handle on your screens there. I am SEGUN OJUMU from me and the rest of the team. Goodbye.